Very good morning to all of you. I hope that I am audible to you all.
Yes, Professor.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, Professor Manatunga, and to all, very good morning once again. And today we are joining with the 10th session of our scientific writing. And the today's title is Tips of Right and Effective Abstract. And we have passed 9 sessions, and from here onwards we have to go another 8 more sessions. Today one is 9, so 18 sessions. And you all may know now that we are granting, or we are awarding a certificate to all of you if you join and register with the 1,000 rupees of 1,000 rupees to the IESL, and the details are given in the scientific writing, that the flyer. And otherwise that you can join to the IESL, you can go to the IESL website, and there you can see that where you can register. And even if anybody register now, though we are asking the 80% attendance, registered person, if you send an email to Mr. Chamila or myself, that we will provide the recording to those people. And please note that we are not providing recording from here onwards. Only the participants who have joined and who are unable to join for the particular day only, we will give that grant or that particular prestige way that we will treat them. And therefore, this is free, and therefore we all ask you to join the future events. Right, okay, now we are coming back to our session today, that our resource persons, once again, with all of your requests, that I invited Professor Jagat Manatunga, Engineer Professor Jagat Manatunga. And thank you very much, sir, for getting out, or that accepting our invitation. And so many participants, actually, they really wanted you to conduct you to means like actually they liked your sessions, and they called me, and even through emails that they thank us to organizing such an event. And once thanking you once again, and as an official manner, let me to read your citation. Professor Jagat Manatunga is a professor attached to Department of Civil Engineering, University of Moratuwa, and he has earned his BSc Honours First Class degree in Civil Engineering from the University of Moratuwa, and MSc and a Diploma in Environmental Engineering from Imperial College London. And he obtained his doctoral degree in Saitama University, Japan. He's a chartered civil engineer and a member of Institution of Environmental Professionals in Sri Lanka, as well as of course, that he's a member of IESL. And he's the current editor of annual transactions of Institution of India, Sri Lanka, and a member of editorial board of the Journal of National Science Foundation, and also IESL, Engineer Journal of IESL. And he has published more than 100 in international index journals, and out of which about 60 are Science Citation Index, and also that he's a reviewer, and also that written several book chapters, and also many monographs. And of course that, as you all know, he's a renowned researcher in Sri Lanka and in the world. And also that very importantly, that he was awarded that the CVCD Vice Chancellor's Excellence Award in 2021 as a best engineering researcher in Sri Lanka. And also he is currently contributing in environmental engineering, water and wastewater technologies, ecological engineering, and also about the pollution control, and as well as climate change and many other things he's in interest. And he's joining with, he's supporting many students, PhD, MPhil and MSc. And I hope that here today he is with us, and we are lucky to listen to him, because with his vast experience, he's going to tell us that how to write an effective abstract, which is very important for any scientific writing including abstract, including when we are writing conference proceedings abstract, when we are submitting abstract, as well as the manuscript, thesis, and articles. Okay, thank you once again to all of you for joining with us, and Mr. Manatunga, forum is over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Banduni. It's a bit long, I suppose. Next time, I think we can skip the citation.
Okay, for the newcomers that I did. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Professor Banduni, for that introduction. Yeah, I don't know whether I deserve to receive all those comments and comments. That's okay. Thank you so much. So let us then start the program. Good morning to everybody, and also happy Diwali to all the participants here, as well as all the Sri Lankans and all the people who celebrate Diwali today worldwide. I did a minor change to the title. The title said write an effective abstract for your research. I removed the research part altogether, because abstract is written for research work when you publish the research work. I thought it's redundant, so I removed that. And also I added one more phrase here, tips to write an effective abstract, because this forum is in fact not a training program for writing. We expect you to have kind of skills in writing, but if not, I think you should acquire good skills of writing, technical writing, scientific writing, whatever that you call. Please make sure that you enhance your abilities of writing. That is one important thing to mention at the beginning. Now, this lecture will focus on tips that I can transfer to you based on my experience, as well as some of the information that I gathered from books, as well as from the internet sources. So I thought this discussion will help you to understand what an abstract is all about, and how to effectively write an abstract, and to give you certain tips on how to write an effective abstract. With that very brief introduction, let me start my presentation. This might take a little longer than 2 hours. I have been allocated 2 hours. I'll try my best to contain the discussion to 2 hours, but if it drags beyond 2 hours, please excuse me. Please be with me. I will not take much time beyond 2 hours, but probably it might take more than 2 hours. Right now, purpose of this lecture is to give you certain tips, as I mentioned to you before. Now, I have jotted down 5 things here. An abstract is a self-contained summary of larger work. Larger work such as your theses, your research that you do at the university, or at your institution, or whatever, for any purpose that you wish to. And the larger work refers to your research work for your undergraduate research, or your postgraduate research, or research as part of your job descriptions, whatever they are. It's a self-contained summary. Self-contained summary. This word self-contained is very important, because the abstract, when it's a summary, it might not be self-contained. It should represent the larger work in a nutshell, right? Usually, the abstract is situated at the beginning of the larger work. When you, especially when it's almost always when you want to publish the results of your larger work, right? The conference or a symposium paper is an exception, which we will discuss later. But for your thesis work or your journal publications, it's almost always at the end of your larger work. You can divide the larger work into several phases, several steps. That's okay, as long as you finish a significant part of your research work. You will be in a position to publish certain results extracted from your research work. And this abstract should be a summary of this part of your larger work, right? So as I mentioned to you before, it's situated at the beginning of the work. The abstract is meant to preview the bigger document. It's not the bigger document. Bigger document would be your thesis, your undergraduate thesis or your postgraduate thesis, or your journal paper, or your conference paper. Abstract is say placed at the beginning as a preview to the bigger document. It should stand by itself, and it should represent the entire document that follows the abstract, the document, either the thesis or the journal paper or conference paper. Abstract helps readers and other researchers find what they are looking for and understand the magnitude of what has been discussed in the journal paper. And abstract can determine the fourth bullet point, whether or not someone becomes interested in your work. Now, this is very important. It's an analogy that we can give as an example. It's like a trailer of a movie. Now, whenever you see a trailer, it's the abstract of the movie, right? When you watch the trailer, you decide whether to watch the movie or not. Similarly, it's like the abstract is like the trailer of a movie. An abstract, it can determine whether or not someone becomes interested in your work, similar to a film. When you watch the trailer, you sometimes you don't feel like watching the movie because the trailer probably has not been set properly. Probably it might not rouse your interest in the film, right? So abstract is a similar thing that you do. It's a trail of your journal paper or your conference paper or your thesis itself, right? So aside from exciting or inciting the readers, abstracts are useful. It's a useful organization tool that helps other researchers and academics find your paper and arouse their interest in reading your paper, and use the information that's contained in your paper for their further work, right? So because of the specific requirements, the last bullet point here, it's best to know a little about how to write an abstract before doing it. So this lecture or this session, whatever you call it, explains the basics of writing an abstract. It's not a writing exercise that we do here, but you can relax back and listen to what I say to get some tips on writing the abstract, probably for your next journal paper, for your next conference paper, or if you are enrolled in a study program, undergraduate or postgraduate, the tips that we discuss here might be useful. Some definitely will be useful, not because that I'm doing it, but I have put down everything in here, not only based on my experience, but based on others' work as well. So I believe very sincerely that this will be useful for you. So this is the purpose of today's work. So let us see what an abstract is. Abstract is a short summary of your research work. For research papers and manuscripts, usually the abstract is one paragraph, which is about 10 to 15 sentences, which is about 200, which represents about 250 to 300 words long, right? So it's typically this word limit is contained in one paragraph. In most cases, right? You can have 2 paragraphs as well. Unless otherwise, there's a breakdown of information that you need to have as the abstract, which I've referred to as structured abstracts, which we will discuss about that later. So if you are publishing a paper in Nature or Science, they need an abstract, sorry, a structured abstract, not a simple abstract. In that case, it's divided into certain paragraphs. But if not, in general, almost all the other journals will have one paragraph. In very rare cases, it will have more than one paragraph. Unless otherwise, you don't need to have more than one paragraph. Stick onto one paragraph, right? And the word limit is almost always set by the journal or the conference. Even for theses, the page limit is set. You can't have a couple of pages for the abstract of your PhD thesis or your MSc thesis or your undergraduate thesis. It's usually just one page, right? So, but you have to understand that for theses or monographs or reports, the length depends on the content, right? For an academic journal, it can be 1 page, right? In most cases, it can be 1 page. If it is longer than 1 page, no, the examiners will see why you need more than 1 page. Unless otherwise you can justify the length to have a longer abstract. Don't ever include more than 1 page for a thesis. For technical reports, it's different. If you are publishing a technical report, a project summary, or a project report, or a technical proposal, whatever you call them, you can have more than 1 page, depending on the content of the summary. For example, I'm working on environmental impact assessment reports. Usually, I include about 3 to 4 pages of the abstract. Sometimes we refer to that as a summary. We refer to that as the executive summary, which is very different to abstract itself, right? Summary and abstract don't ever confuse between the two, right? But when it comes to the abstract of a thesis, it is a summary, right? But for your journal, it has to be a summary, but it has to highlight only the most important parts of the contents of your journal paper or conference paper. But on the other hand, for theses, monographs, and reports, it's a summary where you have to think of all the sections that you have included in the thesis or the report, right? So sometimes there are some complex papers that require more complex abstracts. So you might need to stretch the abstract a bit out to cover everything. But it's not very common. It's not very common, and also it's not very uncommon to have long abstracts, more than 1 page, in advanced scientific work. For example, a PhD thesis, or even a research monograph. Sometimes you can see more than 1 page. It's not an exception. You can have as long as you need a longer write-up. Well-written abstract serves multiple purposes. An abstract lets readers get an idea or a sense of your paper quickly in order to decide whether to read the full paper or not. And the second, an abstract prepares readers to follow the detailed information, analysis, and arguments in your full paper. What you have done, and how you have done it, and what you can derive out of your results. And later, the abstract will help readers remember key points from your paper, right? And there's a request. Sir, could you please explain the difference between summary and abstract? Yeah, summary and abstract. Yeah, very simply put, now abstract is a section of your writing or your piece of writing that you extract the most important parts of your work and you present it as a summary, right? Abstract is a summary, but it itself is not a simple summary. It is, as I mentioned to you before, it is just a moment. As I mentioned to you before, it's a self-contained summary and it's a preview of a bigger document, right? And your idea is to highlight the most important parts of your write-up. But when it comes to summary, you have to pay attention to all the sections that you have included in the write-up. Say, for example, when you compare a journal abstract and an abstract for a thesis, there are two different things. In a thesis, you have to include at least a couple of sentences to represent all the sections that is contained in the thesis. If it is a research monograph, you have to have at least very brief summaries of each part of your report. But in a journal paper, the abstract doesn't need to represent all the sections. You can omit the methods altogether if you think that the results would explain what you have done implicitly, right? So, but I will come on to that later, the difference between an abstract and a longer summary that you need to include. For the time being, please understand that an abstract that you include in a journal paper or conference paper will represent the most important parts extracted from your research work. But a summary, for example, a summary for a research monograph, and even if we call the abstract for the thesis that you submit for your academic degree, they are more summaries of what you have done. It has to include sections which are most important for each step that you have done in your work, right? So it has to have these certain elements which we will discuss a little later, right? So the person who wanted that clarification, please stay back until we discuss further details. You might get clarifications by your concern later on. If not, we will take this again for the discussion. Right, and then going on to describe what abstracts are. Abstract, now here, this card, please read this cartoon later. I'm not going to give details, but now here, this is this lady is yes, there's another comment, abstract, an abstract include the objective. Yes, of course. We will dissect an abstract and see what elements that we can include in an abstract. There will be the answer to your question will be can be expected soon. Please wait for a while, right? And this lady's comments of this person's writing will clearly say what is abstract is all about. It should be understandable by a second person or a third person and the whole scientific community, without which the abstract would just be something hilarious, something not useful for anybody. The abstract pronounces why someone should take your paper seriously. Unless other than other than what you write up is unless otherwise your write up is not clear enough, someone will not make serious efforts to understand what you want to say. The second abstract convinces the world why months of your research matters. Right, because it's highly unlikely that any reader will go through your paper before reading the abstract. It's almost always they will go through the abstract, and if the abstract is attractive for them, if the abstract arouses their interest in your work, then only they will go through the entire paper. If not, they will just put away the paper, and that's the end of the reading of your paper by someone else. Right, so the abstract has to be well written, as I told you before, like the trailer of a movie. It should it should arouse the interest of the reader, so that he or she will go through the rest of the paper and will make use of the contents of your paper in further work. Right. So the abstract, therefore, will let people decide whether to read your paper further or not. Now, let me elaborate on this further. On this, it pronounces why someone should take your paper seriously, and the abstract should convince the world why your research is important, and you have to understand that the abstract will let people decide whether to read your paper or not. Right, and finally, the abstract is critical for editors, for screening and to find qualified reviewers. Right? So once you submit a paper to a conference or for a journal, the editor or the managing editor, the editor-in-chief, or the coordinating editors will go through the abstract to decide on whether to accept it or not for screening. In most cases, papers might not go beyond the screening stage if the abstract is not well written. And then if it is, if it catches the attention of the editorial board or the editorial members or the editor-in-chief, based on the contents of the abstract, he or she or the editorial board will decide to whom the paper should be sent for review. Right? No, I'm in the editorial board of the JNF, the Journal of National Foundation, the National Science Foundation, JNSF. Usually we receive so many abstracts from time to time for screening, right? Now we go through the abstract, and if it is not interesting, we will reject right away, and that is the end of the review process. But if the abstract is good enough, if it is interesting, we go through the paper to decide whether it should be go forward for reviewing, right? So based on the content of the abstract, we decide whether to go ahead or not, right? So it is very crucial for the screening processes. If you are not submitting a good, well-written abstract to a journal, then the chances of acceptance of your journal paper is very remote, right? Now, the purpose of the abstract. Now, as I mentioned to you before, it's worth remembering that search engines and these databases, or these bibliographic databases, as they technically referred to as, they use abstracts, right, as well as the title to identify the key terms for indexing and publishing your paper. So that you include in your abstract, and the keywords that you include in your abstract or in your keywords or your title are very crucial in helping other researchers find your paper, because the abstracting or indexing services, they use the abstract for this purpose, right? So the formulation or the setting your title for the paper, selection of the title and the keywords are very important, as well as the abstract itself. And you know that many times research indexing databases like Scopus or Science Direct, they show only the abstract of the paper as the search result, right? So for example, I can show you an example. If I go to the Science Direct, you can see Science Direct. This is the first page. If you type a keyword here, say water quality, for example, it's a very ambiguous phrase anyway. But let's see the search. Now this is the search that you have. You have about more than 1 million searches. Now each of these, the list that you have searched for water quality, the title is given first, right? So that is the most important thing that you need your attention to pay on. If the title is not good enough, the title is not well formulated, if the title is not attractive enough, nobody will pay attention to your research, right? Second, if the title is interesting enough, if the title gives at least an idea for the reader to go a bit further in finding the details of the study. For example, the first title here, use of water quality index and multivariate statistical methods for evaluation of water quality of stream affected by multiple stresses, a case study. If the person is interested in this, he will click on this publication, right? So it is published in Environmental Pollution. It gives the title again, and it gives highlights and the abstract. So this is what the reader has access to at the preliminary stages, right? And the reader will go through the abstract to see whether it has any important information that he or she can make use of in her or his own research, right? So then the abstract, if the abstract is well written, and if the abstract includes the information that is important enough for the reader to go further, and he will go through the full paper. The full paper can be downloaded, can be purchased, or can be downloaded if you have membership for this particular journal. And there are so many other ways that you can get hold of this paper, right? So this is the first step in doing the literature review, right? You have long lists of research articles, and the first access that you have is the title itself, and then the abstract, right? So that is why the abstract is so important. The abstract should be well written. The abstract should say catch the attention of a reader, without which your paper will not be something that will be circulated among the research circles, right? So going back to the presentation, So what you include in abstract or in your title are crucial for helping other researchers find your paper, right? And abstract is one of the most read parts, probably the only part of a research paper, and it's very tricky for the same reason, right? So as I told you before, abstracts are incredibly useful for indexing. They make it easier for researchers to find precisely what they are looking for without the need for wasting time skimming and going through files and files of paper, right? So with the invent of the digital databases, so these abstracts are the ones that are included in the indexing with a link for full papers, because full papers are not freely available nowadays. You have to pay, unless otherwise they are say sharing information without any obligations, like open public, say online publications or open publications, right? So sometimes when reader finds your title attractive, he or she will read the abstract, as I told you before, and because abstracts sometimes touch the results of a paper, the researchers and say postgraduate students or undergraduate students can see right away if the paper can be used for their research work, right? Sometimes most of the researchers, they read the abstracts not because that they want to find more information. When they are short of citations, for example, when they are short of writing their literature review, for example, or finding information for the discussion part, they when they have no time, when there's a limitation of time, they just go through the abstracts to find the information that they need to that they are looking for, right? So as I told you before, therefore nowadays abstracts are very important for search engine, optimizing the search engines or search engine optimizations. If someone Googles the words are used in your abstract, the link of your paper will be very often found by the researchers, and there's a high chance that readers will go your paper, cite your paper, and citations for your paper will pick more quickly. And many researchers check out the abstract section to decide whether to further explore into the paper or not. If they explore further, there's a chance that they might include information from your paper in their thesis or a journal, and there will be citations, and your citations will increase, right? So therefore, the abstract is so important, and this is what I wanted to highlight. You need to write a clear, concise, and compelling abstract, because the abstract is essentially the researcher's elevator pitch to the world. If you don't write a good abstract, if the abstract doesn't catch the attention of a reader, there are very less chances that your paper will be cited, and with less citations and with no citations, your publication is lost somewhere within heaps and heaps of research publications, right? So going to the next slide, basic features of an abstract. This is very important. Academic journals often have specific requirements for abstracts. Specific guidelines are available in the journals, in conferences, and even it depends on the universities. They have guidelines given for abstract writing, abstracts to be included in the thesis, for example, right? And these guidelines might give you an idea of how to organize the abstract. If you're writing an abstract for the paper or the thesis, it's very straightforward, because the journal might give you certain tips how to write the abstract, how to formulate it, and the length of the abstract, and so on. For the thesis, your library or the university might have a specific format that you need to follow. Or your supervisor might also guide you. He or she might give you specific guidelines as to what to include and how to organize your abstract. And if you have a good supervisor, you are lucky. you can always depend on his or her advisors. So your abstract should be intelligible on its own without a reader having to read your entire paper, right? So it should be intelligible and on its own. It should give the compressed picture of the big work that you have already been doing and already you have already done, right? So in an abstract, you usually do not cite references, and your abstract should describe three things: what you have studied in your research, what you have found, and what you argue in your paper. These three are very important. You have to tell the reader what you have studied, what you have found, and what you argue, right? So what you have studied, a support sentence to tell the reader why it is important to study that particular topic, the need to do that research, the research question, the research void that you are trying to fill in, right? So this is a broad thing, that what you have studied, it has to be preceded by the research question, the hypothesis that you are going to test, the research question that you are going to answer, right? And what you have found. For that, you have to tell the reader how you have done the study as well, right? How you have done the study and what you have found, and what you argue. You have to give a very short discussion on the importance of what you have found, right? So similarly for academic journals, or even for academic theses, there might there can have some specific requirements. As I told you before, if the abstract is a structured abstract, then the requirements might be a bit different, right? So I will go into some details of these contents very soon. And you know that because the abstracts come first, it's very tempting to write it first. So you might be tempted to write your abstract first because it will appear as the first part of your paper. It's a good idea to wait to write your abstract until after you have drafted the full paper. This is very important. You have to wait until you have drafted your full paper, right? So that you know what you are summarizing, because once you have finished at least drafting the first version of the draft, then you will be in a better position to decide on the information that you need to include in the abstract, right? You can't first write the abstract and then go on writing the paper. No, that's not the way that you need to do, right? So to summarize, writing the abstract at the end, I think it's the most effective way. It's the only way that you can write a good abstract, right? Because as I given you here, you will have a better understanding of what you need, what you have included in the paper, right? Because now if you're focusing on part of your research to include in a journal paper, then without writing the journal paper fully, you will not be in a position to summarize as an abstract what you have included in the paper. It's not the abstract of your whole research project. It's the abstract that you are reporting in that particular paper. It's less complicated if you are doing if you're writing the abstract or the summary of your thesis, because anyway you have to include everything that you have done for your degree in your abstract. But if it is a conference paper or journal paper, it's different, because in most cases it will represent only part of what you have done already, right? So when you have finished writing, I believe that you will discover new implications of what you have written, what you have included in your discussion, and what you have included in your results part, and you will be in a very good position, better position to write the abstract. Because once you finish writing the draft of your paper, you don't have to shift the structure of the abstract over and over again, right? So finish writing the first draft of your paper, and then you will be in a better position. You'll be better prepared to write the abstract once the main part is over, right? Please remember that. And now at this point, I need to tell you that now you might, apart from writing an abstract for your research, completed research, there can be instances where you need to write an abstract in other circumstances as well. Now, one instance where you need to write an abstract is for grant proposals or proposal writing, right? Even conference papers also might, you can submit conference papers before concluding your research, because conferences and symposiums are meant for creating a platform for researchers to come together and discuss about their experience and share their thoughts, and also to clarify any doubts that he or she has on a specific topic. Or so conference papers, I mean, the culture in Sri Lanka is not that conducive, but worldwide in most academic conferences, they are meant for creating a platform for say, encouraging discussion among the researchers. And therefore, conference papers also can be in the middle of what you're doing. In that case, the things that we discuss as main part of this discussion might not be relevant for such abstracts for grant proposals, abstracts for degree registration, abstracts that you write for partly concluded research submissions that you made for symposiums or conferences. So, but if we might discuss a little bit of those as well towards the end of this discussion, right? Now, the most important slide of today's discussion is this. Now, the contents of that abstract: why you have done the study, how you have done the study, and what you want others to know about the study. Why, how, and what. Those are the three important steps of writing an abstract, right? In typical kinds of information that are found in most abstracts are here. I have given it in 7 I'm sorry, this is a different version that I'm using, but this has been taken from University of Wisconsin. They are writing aids for researchers. I will include the reference to this at the underneath here. I'm sorry that I have not included that here, but before sharing these slides, I will include the reference to this later. The first that you need to include is the context or background information for your research, the general topic under the study, and the specific topic of your research, right? This is the first thing that you need to include, right? Sometimes some people refer to this as the thesis statement. If it is, even though it's included in a journal paper, they refer to that as the thesis statement, the context of the background, the general topic under the study, the specific topic, just to give a very brief introduction to the abstract itself, right? And then the second, the most important section of the abstract would be the central question or questions or statements of the problem of your research, of the research that addresses, right? So without a central question, without a need, a research need identifying, without a problem identification, there cannot be research anymore, right? So at least if you are doing even a literature, say a critical review of the past work, still you need to have the need to conduct the critical review for any experiments that you do, for any modeling studies, for any field work that you do, whatever the mode of your study, you need to identify the research need. In our literature review, when we discussed about how to how to conduct a literature review, we discussed the importance of conducting a literature review so that you know what has been already been done and how to look for an effective title for your effective area for further research, right? So you need to identify the need to conduct research, without which there will be no, the research will not be any original. You will be duplicating, you will be following what others have done, which will not catch any attention of any reader. The third, what's already known about the question, what previous research has done or shown, right? The previous work. This is what we do in a thesis abstract. This is the literature review that we conduct. Similarly, for journal papers also, you have to include some information about previous research, what is already known and what others have done, right? And the main reasons, the need, the rationale, and the goal of your research. This is connected to the central question, right? This 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all interconnected, right? The context and the background, the central question, what is known and what others have done, and the 1, 2, 3 are the basis for setting the reason for conducting the study, setting the need to conduct the study, setting the rationale or the defining the goals for your research. So this 1 to 4 can be just one statement in abstract. It can be 2 statements, or you can have say one statement to include 1, 2, and 3. 4 can be 1 or 2 statements separately, right? Or else some researchers, if they are smart enough, if they have good writing skills, they might combine 1, 2, 3, and 4 as a composite sentence or 2, and include all this information in the abstract. And you have to describe your research, the method and methods also. The methods, including the methods, how to do this study is also important. And then what you have found, the main findings, results, and arguments, and the significance or implications of your findings. 6 and 7 are the most important parts of the abstract, right? So once the reader knows why you have done, why part is from 1 to 4, right? So how part is how we have conducted the study, just number 5. What have you found, 6 and 7, right? So 1 to 4, the reader will go from 1 to 4, and if the reader thinks that what you have done is important, then they will see how you have done the study, and then they will look for your results and how you interpret the results as the most important part of your research work, right? So abstracts contain most of these kinds of information in brief form, right? So the body, of course, the body of the paper will then develop and explain these further. And I will give you a couple of examples after this. And these examples, you will note that the proportion of the abstract that you devote to each of these information, the number 1, the central question, what is already known, the reasons for conducting the study, the methods, findings. I mean, they are not proportionately divided among the very limited numbers of words that you have in the abstract, right? So the space that you devote, the number of words that you devote for each of these sections depends on the style of your writing, and depending on the nature and the content of the paper that you are summarizing as an abstract. So you have to very, very carefully, you have to observe that, right? Even though I have given these 7 points here, don't confuse that. It doesn't mean that you have to touch upon all these one after the other, right? No, it's not. But you can organize your work depending on the context, depending on the nature of the information that you have to report, right? In most cases, some of this information is implied rather than explicitly stated, right? That's why I said 1, 2, 3 can be combined, 3 and 4 can be combined. But 5 methods, if you want to express your methods, you have to have it as a separate sentence or 2. Sometimes you don't have to include your methods, because if you say that there's a need to conduct the study using modeling parts, then you don't have to say I did this study using mathematical models or physical models or anything else, right? Sometimes the methods are also implied. But findings, results, and arguments, and the significance of the implications 6 and 7, you have to explicitly state what you have found and why the results are important to be reported, right? So in these examples, you will understand that these 7 sections, there should be information to represent each of these sections. If not, I mean, sometimes, as I told you before, there are some information that are implied. You don't have to specifically repeat. If you repeat the context of the topic or the general topic, the central question is embedded in that. And then you don't have to specifically say why you need to do the research, because the central question itself might give a basis for conducting your research, right? And when you state the context of your research, the central question and the main reasons of why you are doing it, the previous research may be understood by the researcher, right? So if he or she wants further information, yes, of course, they can go into details of the paper later on, right? Please understand that this is the trailer of your, the preview of your paper, right? So if somebody is interested in these parts, they can further go into the details of the paper to find out more. But the main point that I want to make here is that you have to summarize the information so that it will represent the preview of what you have done. And it has to be written in a way that it attracts the attention of the reader, right? So let us see how to organize the contents of the abstracts. So when you are doing a study, you have to say why it is important to address the research questions, why you are examining a topic, whether it is worth examining, whether are you filling a gap in your previous research. So you are whether you are looking at a fresh look at existing ideas or data, or whether you are trying to review the existing literature and so on. So these are the things that we can go on and discuss now, right? So these are some of the examples that I can give you. Now, just the first example. Now there are 7. These are the 7 important parts that I want to highlight here, right? Now, very quickly, if we go through this, the content of the abstract. I'm sorry, I don't have the title for this abstract, but this is environmental fluid dynamics. You can go through this very quickly to see, to note where they have included this information, right? So when you say, now the first sentence here, the advection equation is one of the most commonly used models in environmental fluid dynamics. Now, this part of the abstract gives the context of the background, the general or the specific topic under study, advection equation. And he says it's the most commonly used models in environmental fluid dynamics. These 2 parts of the sentence will introduce very, very shortly, but very effectively what the person is going to do. Then this paper is, I mean, you can understand that the context of the background is advection equation. Is the key, right? He has given the advection equation as his keyword at the beginning of the abstract. This is a very powerful way of conveying the message, right? So his focus is an advection equation, right? And he says that it's the most commonly used models in environmental dynamics. He's going further to explain this, and this will give a sentence to give the introduction to the specific topic. And there's a very important phrase here. Despite this, this is now he's now deviating from the context of the general background, right? Now he's trying to formulate the central question by saying, by deviating from this very standard, general statement. Despite this, there exist very few analytical solutions to this question. Now here, this very good way, this phrase is very good. Despite this, so he deviates from the general or the specific topic, and he says that there exist very few analytical solutions to this equation. So he refers to the already known or the previous research, and the central question or the statement of problems. And also he highlights with this, despite this, there exist very few analytical solutions to this equation. Now he then gives some reason to do the research, right? This is now he sets the flow for the reader to understand that there still has further room for further research work on this particular area. Advection equation for used in environmental fluid dynamics. Even though this is the most commonly used models, there exist very few analytical solutions to this equation for the case where the velocity field is spatially varying. Now he specifically gives where this should be applied to, because for when the velocity field is spatially varying, there are very few analytical solutions that exist. So he gives by one sentence he covers the central question, what is already known, and there's the void that needs to be filled, the main reason, and the goal for the research. Now, by reading this the specific sentence, is deviating from what is already known, and this sentence gives the reader the idea of there's a question as if we develop a mathematical model and we publish only the abstract, how to include the findings? Yeah, that's a tricky question, because when you have complex content in the abstract, you have to decide whether the development of the mathematical model is important or the results are important. Sometimes when you the mathematical model, the formulation itself is important in certain cases. In certain cases, you use a mathematical model to derive certain results. For example, a trend or say spatial variations or say temporal variations of phenomena and so on. So you have to decide which part that you want to stress. If it is a formulation of the model, then you can describe the model formulation. But if you have formulation the model plus if you want to discuss about the results, then you have to think both. But don't ever include equations unless otherwise the equation itself is the finding, right? You can say that you have formulated the mathematical model using a structured modeling or in say whatever the specific requirement that you need to have. Then because the abstract will be the door for the reader to go forward and find information in your research paper, right? So you can give an indication of what you have done in your mathematical modeling study, and you can attract the attention of the reader to go forward and find the paper and read more in the subsequent paper, right? So usually we don't include equations or the model formulations unless otherwise the model formulation itself or the equation itself is important, right? Now here, now the second sentence is very important. It's a composite sentence which includes 2, 3, and 4 put together, right? So this example is given to tell you that, I mean, even though I have given 7 points here, you don't have to write sentences to represent each of these, right? You can easily combine 1, 2, 3, and 4 together and have these 2 sentences. You have covered 1 to 4, right? This phrase "despite" here is very important because the first sentence and this deviation from what is already known is an indication that you have a reason to conduct this study further, right? And bulk of the rest of the work, in this work, a class of solutions to blah, 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 blah. So the authors described how this has been done, right? Until to this particular part, until here, right? The first and second order upwind methods are being used. So he describes the analytical methods, because here now the method development is the most important part that the authors want to highlight, because they say that there's a need that this commonly used model has to be cover this when the velocity field is spatially varying. So they are developing a new method to include this less researched area, right? So they have decided that they are rather than reporting the results, their method is the most the original part of the work. So they want to highlight the methods that they have developed as the original part of their work, and then further they have given further two sentences to describe, just one sentence, a very long sentence, to describe the findings and the results and the importance of the results, right? So you can see that now this abstract, they have not used the number of words to represent all these 7 features or elements or attributes of the abstract, but they have decided that the presenting the method is the most original part of their work. That is, they may have decided that it is their original contribution to the advancement of that particular topic. So they have highlighted it here. For any reader or for any person who wishes to study on these models in environmental fluid dynamics, this method development would be more important than results itself. The results are needed because once you develop a method, you need to validate the method with convincing results. So that's why they have the last part included here. So they have devoted much of their work, much of the abstract to describe the methods, supported by validation part of the methods. Right? You can see this is a very well structured abstract, very well written, and it will attract the attention of any research because the flow is very smooth and very methodical, as well as it has some say logical breakdown of information. Right. So let's go to another less complicated topic, less complicated abstract here. This is about deforestation. Now read the first sentence here. Tropical forests disappear rapidly because of deforestation. Up to there, this is the context of the information. Now this abstract is about tropical forest disappearing because of deforestation. Now there are three key three or four very important phrases. Now when the number of words are very limited, you can't lose the space for unnecessary write-ups. Now here, the first part of the sentence gives a very clear understanding of what the general context of the topic is. Tropical forests disappear rapidly because of deforestation. Each of these words are very important. Tropical forests disappear rapidly because of deforestation. The reason is given, and what happens to what the fate of tropical forests are given here. Disappear rapidly. I mean, if you remove this rapidly word, the attraction is gone, right? When they disappear rapidly, then it catches the attention of the reader, right? And because of deforestation, the reason is also given there. Right now, it gives you, without having long sentences, it gives a very succinct and very brief and very clear message to the reader as to what the context of the background information is, right? Yet, now this word is very important here, yet, now it deviates from the general topic. Even though it disappears rapidly because of deforestation, yet they have the potential to regrow naturally on abundant lands. Right now, the second part of the sentence here gives the central statement questions and the already known. What is already known about regrowth naturally, right? So they have the potential to regrow naturally on abundant lands, right? So if they have the potential to regrow on natural lands, it's worth looking at this if you want to control deforestation due to certain, if you want to address disappearing tropical forests due to deforestation by regrowing naturally on abandoned lands, right? So the second part of the sentence with this deviation, they have the potential to regrow naturally on abandoned lands. Now then you can, by reading this first sentence, you know the background of the study and their focus, why they want to do it, because they want to explore this potential to regrowth further. Right now, it implies that not much work has been done on this. Without saying that, they further say they go to describe further analytical methods. Right. So this 2, 3, and 4 are part here are all included in here. So we analyze how 12 forest attributes recover during blah, 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 and recovery rates, everything is done here, right? So they have interrelated the recovery patterns in 77 sites across the tropics. So now they have given the methods very briefly. And they know that their method is not very important. Their results are very important. So they go and describe about the methods, large details without. No, I will go. Yeah, you don't give any citations in the abstracts unless otherwise the citation itself is the focus of your research. No, you don't, because in certain review work, for example, if the citation is very important, then you can cite that. But in general, we don't have citations in the abstracts. Now, in this abstract, now the background is given, the need is given, the method is given. The method is very simple, so they don't have to describe these methods in detail. So they have devoted much of the space to describe their results, because the results are more important than the method itself, because the method is very simple. And then finally, the last sentence is devoted to tell the reader how important their work is. So secondary forest should be embraced as a low-cost natural solution for ecosystem restoration, climate change mitigation, biodiversity conservation. That's their conclusion or the significance, or what they want to highlight as their contribution to the scientific advancement of the scientific knowledge, right? So the third example, very quickly. This is again from a botanical study. The sheathing, just go through it very quickly. The sheathing leaf found in grasses and other monocots is an evolutionary innovation. So it gives you now this gives two parts: the context of the background as well as what is already known, because they say that sheathing leaf found in grasses and other monocots is an evolutionary innovation, right? So this has been found in previous studies. So 1 and 3 are included in here. Yet this is very important. These words are very important when you want to deviate from what is already known. Then the reader automatically knows that the next sentence would be the highlight of the central question and the main reasons for conducting the study. Yet its origin has been a subject of long-standing debate, right? The central question that they are going to study. Here we revisit the problem in the light of development genetics and computational modeling, right? So they describe the central question as well as the main reason for conducting it, right? And then we show that the sheathing leaf likely rose through independent extension. So they gives the main reasons and conducting the research, and then analytical methods is given here, and the rest of the abstract is devoted to highlighting the main findings, arguments, and significance. Right now, from all these, you may have noted that either the methods and results. I mean, in most cases, the methods and results are the mostly occupy the major chunk of the abstract, major part of the abstract. If the method development itself is the original contribution, you can devote more to the method development. If you think that the results and the discussion of the results are the focus of your research, the highlight of your research, pay more attention to the results part, right? And the significance part, right? So naturally, 5, 6, and 7, these are the 3 that occupies at least 70 to 80% of your write-up, right? But if you want to highlight, now then depends. I mean, don't take it as a general rule or general observation. Depending on what you are doing, the nature of your study, you can even have identification of the research need might also be something that can contribute to the advancement of the topic, right? I'm not going into further examples. I have now this expression is also important here. Now, in contrast to the prevailing view, this is how you argue, how you review the previous studies, the discussion, critical discussion of what you are doing, right? Our results suggest that, right? Now you're highlighting what you suggest. In contrast, in contrast to the prevailing view, our research studies that whereas the blade, I have another word here, consistent with homologies proposed in the 19th century. So the last sentence is very well phrased here. Now, when they say that in contrast to the prevailing view, he disagrees with what others have done in the past. Our results suggest that he gives something that goes against the already known knowledge. And then again, at the end, he finds some consistency with what is already known, right? So it's a very well-written abstract because it gives a very critical review, agreements and disagreements of their own results with the previous work. So this is a good way of giving a critical analysis to what you have been doing, right? So I'm skipping this further work here. I will include this in the presentation. So due to the increasing tendency, the need arises. Now these are now wind loads has become more important. So giving more prominent to the context as well as what is already known and what should be done, right? So currently, application of performance-based wind design to reduce blah blah blah. Now this in this case, the half of the abstract is devoted to 1, 2, 3, 4. Right now here, however, now he is going against what is already known. So what 1, 2, 3 is up to here. Now here he's trying a reason for conducting the research, right? So this is 1, 2, and this is 3, and this is 4. Now, contrary to what I have mentioned in the previous examples, now at least more than half the abstract is devoted to 1, 2, 3, and 4 because the researchers, the authors of this paper, their identification of the research need is very important to highlight as part of their main focus of the research. And then they say what they have done and what important information that they have gathered from the previous literature, right? So I have a 6th example also. Please have a look at that as well. A 7th example and 2 examples for you to do. I don't think we have time for that exercise. Anyway, I'll leave that for you. So always try to analyze the abstracts and see what you can gather from these previous examples, right? So those are some of the examples that I want you to highlight and what to include and how to include and how much to include in the abstract. Now, when you write an abstract, you have to choose verb sentences very carefully. Now, these are recommended for conventional science-based research. In rationale or justification for the previous research, you can use present tense or the present perfect tense, what remains to be done. And also to introduce the study, you can say present tense. You have to use the past tense or the past perfect to describe what others have done previously, what methods that they have followed previously and what others have found previously. And the present tense to explain the significance of your own study, right? So this is the general use of tenses. Now, you want to highlight the research need and the question. This is very important. Even in your research, the literature review, you have to use these sparingly in abundance. These adverbs are very important. When you want to deviate from what is already known, or when you want to put forward a critical review or critical statement, or If you want to have a critique, then you can use these adverbs. But, nevertheless, nonetheless, still, yet, though, although. These are some of the things that, I mean, they have, I think, when it comes to scientific jargon, the meaning are almost always the same, but sometimes the syntax might not be the most suitable. So you have to look for the correct, so the most appropriate verb using the syntax of the language, right? So you have to master such skills as well, not only grammar, but also use of these words. To be use perfect syntax in your sentence construction, right? So that is all about the abstracts that you have to need to include in thesis in your not in thesis. We will come again in a little while in conference papers or in journal papers especially, right? Now, the second part of today's presentation, the shorter version of the section would be abstracts for a research proposal. Now, whatever that we have discussed so far is applicable for a thesis, for a journal paper or a conference paper. When you want to draft a research proposal, I think you have a separate topic on drafting research proposals. So I'm not going into details of how to write research proposals, but the abstract part of the research proposal will act as the first step before producing the thesis or the research proposal, the grant proposal. So when you have the first step, the first section of the abstract in the research proposal, it means that to elicit approval from a supervisor. Now, when you want to start an academic degree, your supervisor or the university would ask you to submit a proposal. If you want funding to support your research work, you have to submit a grant proposal, right? Those are the research proposals that I'm referring to here, right? Now, when you put the abstract as your first part of the proposal, whether it's a grant proposal or a research proposal for a degree, to invite or elicit approval from the supervisor or the academic research committee, the abstract has to be has to describe what you are planning to do very clearly, right? So whether it's a proposal for a degree or proposal for a grant, there are three parts that you need to include, right? So here you can have the research question. You can have sections for this abstract, right? These abstracts for research proposals or grant proposals, you have to contact the university or the supervisor or the grant agency for the format for the abstract, right? Because usually the abstract is screened first before evaluating the detailed proposal further, right? You can have sections for these research proposals, whether if it is a proposal for a degree or proposal for a grant. You can first highlight the research question, why you need to do the research, the research need, the research problem, whatever that you call, and then develop a hypothesis or a major objective for the project. Sometimes you refer to this as the aim. Aim and objective are to do different things, but objectives are subsidiary to aims, right? So you can have the hypothesis or the aim and the main objectives, and you have to list down the plan of action and the procedures. Sometimes very simply we say that the methodology, methods to be used, methods and materials, whatever that you use, you have to describe your plan of action and the procedures to accomplish the objectives. Right, and then the most importantly here, you have to highlight the potential impact of your work. This is the only part that would attract the supervisor of your research when you submit the proposal for the degree, and even for the funding agency. The potential impact of your work is very important. Right? Whatever that you report here as the research question, the hypothesis, and the plan of your action, so the methods and development methodologies. The potential has to be, should be written very carefully. The potential is a result of your research question and hypothesis. And your plan of action would describe the results that you expect. So you need to describe 1, 2, and 3 very clearly to come up with convincing impacts that you would need to report here, right? So these 4 are equally important, but the most attractive section, the most sought after section for a supervisor or the research says funding agency would be the last one. So be very careful when you write a research proposal, whether for a degree or a research grant. You have to cover all these sections, not the 7 parts that we discussed earlier. So those the previous parts are only for completed research, right? So these 7 parts that I have highlighted here are only for the purpose of reporting the concluded research, for a journal paper, for a conference paper, and so on. But here, the highlight here is the research proposal, whatever that you write prior to commencement of your research, right? To attract a potential supervisor or proposals. So you have to write the abstract accordingly. So the abstracts for a research proposal, even now very similar to what has been done, what has been discussed earlier. You have to first fill up all the necessary forms and the detailed proposals before writing the abstract, right? So even though it appears first, the abstract should be edited last as a concise summary of the proposal. Length depends on the specific guidelines. The university might tell you the length of the abstract, length of the detailed research proposal itself, and you need to summarize, relate your ideas to the real world, and show the gap and the need. Why do you do this? So this is very important, because if you can't highlight why you need to do this, you can't even highlight why it is important doing this, and you can't highlight the last part of what we discussed before, the potential impact of the work which will attract the potential supervisor or the funding agency, right? So you have to present your goals, you outline your plans, explain what you expect to achieve, and explain what these findings means, why it is so significant, and how will your efforts make the world a better place. If you want to say it the other way around, how will your efforts contribute to the advancement of the science? How will your efforts contribute to the advancement of the topic that you are looking at, right? Your supervisor will be attracted only if you are contributing at least say whatever it is, a small contribution, he or she will be looking at that particular contribution, because the supervisor will be looking at possible publications, potential publications arising out of your work. And otherwise, he or she notices that your work is important, they might not be interested in supervising you. The funding agencies, especially, they might have their own prejudices. They might have their own priorities. They might have their own, say thrust areas. So you have to understand why they are providing potential funding for research, right? So if it is funding from NRC or NSF, they are looking at the national development, right? The government has priorities for certain areas for research. So you have to understand such priority areas, their objectives of funding. If you are doing research for the industry, you have to understand why they want to fund, their interests, right? So you have to be aligned with their interests. If not, your proposal will be not worth submitting, and your abstract, if that cannot highlight why the proposal is important, why the proposed work is important, then you can't do anything further, right? So research question to be included in the proposal. I'm very quickly reading through this because it's very important to remember that if you cannot answer some of these questions, I mean, you can't go forward. Your research proposal will be dropped, right? Your research proposal will be the research question that you include in the research proposal should be clear and understandable, which you have to definitely include in the abstract, right? And the research question that you include in the proposal and the abstract should be capable of development into a research design, right? You cannot develop you cannot identify the research question. The research question has to be supported by what others have done previously, right? And the research question should be linked to each other. Unrelated research questions put together would not make a good proposal, right? And you will find difficulties in formulating your abstract at the end of the day, right? And so aim and objectives to be included in the proposal, which you need to extract to the abstract. So once I'm not going into details of that because this is not very much important to the abstract writing, but you have to include the aim and the objectives. In general, the general intention of the research proposal, which is to paint a picture of your research project. You have to emphasize on the outcome that you're planning to achieve and address the long-term project outcomes. Once the aims have been established, the next task is to formulate the objectives. Objectives are subsidiary to the aims. Usually, there should be one aim for your research, and then you can have a couple of objectives. But there are long lists of objectives. Don't go beyond 3-4 objectives. Maximum should be 5. Ideally, if you can formulate your objectives to 3, that would be great. That would be good enough, right? So in the abstract for the proposal, please highlight the aim of your research as well as the objectives. That will catch the attention of the evaluator, whether it's the potential supervisor or the funding agency itself, right? So the third part would be the conference abstracts. Now, as I told you before, conference papers does not necessarily need to be one that arises from a completed research, right? Now, there is a misconception that we have in Sri Lanka. We consider conference papers as publications. Now, don't ever consider that, unless otherwise they are say indexed like IEEE. Yes, they are conference papers are reviewed and they are published later as proceedings. The proceedings of IEEE is considered traditionally considered as a journal, right? So even though IEEE conferences, even we refer to them as conferences, they ultimately they result in the publication of a journal paper, right? So there are some exceptions, but other than that, these academic societies, these universities, they have conferences, symposiums, colloquiums, and etc., etc. And these have to be platforms for researchers to come together, discuss their commonalities, their interests, their common interests, and discuss this research further, and to share thoughts, share their experiences, and then also to clarify anything that they are in doubt, right? So it is kind of a review process that you have to expose yourself to researchers, because research, you can't do everything for yourself. You have to, someday you have to, otherwise you are doing groundbreaking research. You are working for innovative kind of research, and you are certain that you will succeed and you will get a patent, or you are applying for a say some kind of a prestigious award. Then you can hide your research until otherwise you can publish them. But other than that, make the conference a platform so that you can expose, you can share your thoughts with others, invite criticisms, constructive criticism, so that you can rectify those, you can improve on these comments and go forward, right? Yeah, I think now the Springer, yeah, there are some index journals that rises out of these conferences. Now Springer also, even Elsevier, now they have abolished publishing conference proceedings as journal issues. Springer is also phasing out, as I know, they had these procedia and these proceedings converted to journals. Now I think they are now moving away from publishing conference proceedings as journals. But anyway, now even if they publish conference proceedings as journals, there's a rigorous review process after the conference. Not all the conference papers are published in these Springer or Elsevier journals. They pick. They have their own set criteria, and they pick and select the best papers out of the submissions, and they have to undergo the review process, and then they select them the such papers, selected papers from conferences to go ahead as journal papers. Those are exceptions, but general make conferences as platforms for say enabling or facilitating researchers to come together, a conducive platform to come to meet them together, and they can discuss their ongoing research, share thoughts, experiences, clarify that anything that they're confused with. So don't ever hesitate to submit anything that is partly done as conference papers, right? Because I mean, but you have to submit the conference paper. I mean, such partially completed papers only if you have a basis for such submissions. If you want to highlight certain things, if you want to highlight, if you think that the methodology that you have developed is worth presenting, tell others what you have done so far, right? If you are facing difficulties, if you have say tried out some methods, and if you have failed, if you want to expose that to others, tell the others that you have done certain things, but you have failed. And if you want to seek the comments from others, yes, make the conference a platform to do that. But unfortunately, the conference organizers, the editorial boards in the conferences that we organize here in Sri Lanka, they are looking for complete papers. I don't know. They are trying to discourage certain submissions. Their review process are sometimes vigorous, sometimes baseless. I'm not criticizing anybody, but make sure the conferences, organizers of conferences, make sure that they are platforms for say developing research areas conducive to and also helping students, especially novice or those who are new to research. They can meet more experienced researchers and then say, contribute to the advancement of knowledge, right? Now, that is not what I want to highlight here in this slide here. Now, conference papers, when you submit the conference papers, think that your primary audience is the conference review committee, right? The abstract, so that it catches the attention of the conference organizers. Because they receive sometimes say several hundreds of papers, and then they screen out the numbers that they need, and therefore you need to catch their attention, write your abstract appropriately. And your secondary audience would be the participants, right? So participants sometimes you need to impress them as well, but the nature of conferences are such that they might not listen to you attentively, unless otherwise the session itself and the topic itself is not attractive enough, right? So you need to make sure that you satisfy the requirements of the primary audience rather than secondary audience when you submit the conference abstracts, right? Now, definitely you will have to follow the guidelines for the abstract submission. In most of the journals, they don't have specific guidelines for submission of abstracts or the formulation of the abstracts. They just have a word limit. But for conferences, they have very specific requirements. In sometimes the conferences they don't invite full papers. They are only abstract submissions only. So they have the length is specified. Sometimes the format of the content is also specified, right? So make sure that you understand their requirements, and then you submit your conference abstract accordingly. The fourth is the thesis abstracts, right? The thesis abstracts, most of you, I think, are students of postgraduate degrees and undergraduate degrees. So you have to make sure that now this is the first comment that I got. The difference between the abstract and a summary. Now, when I compare an abstract, a conference abstract and a thesis abstract, I would say that the abstract of a thesis is more like a summary than an abstract, right? So the journal, as the examples will give you an idea of the type of information that you need to include in an abstract that you submit for a journal. But if I give you examples of a thesis summary, it is a bit different, because the thesis summary should represent. Now this is the second point here that I have given. The abstract is summary of the whole thesis. It presents all the major elements of your work in a highly condensed form. This is very important, right? So it's a summary, and it should represent all the major elements of your work. Even in a conference, the journal abstract, you need to include all the major elements, but not to represent everything in a proper order. You can organize your write-up so that you highlight what you want to highlight, right? So but here in the thesis, it's not that. And you have to summarize much of the work in very highly condensed form, right? So if you compare the two abstracts, journal abstract, journal paper abstract, and thesis abstract is more like a concise version of the breakdown of your information, right? But I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to devote equal spaces for each section, right? So let us see what I have written here. The first bullet point: the abstract is an important component of your thesis. Presented at the beginning of the thesis, it is likely the first substantive description of your work read by an external examiner. You should view it as an opportunity to set accurate expectations. If the abstract of the thesis is not well written, don't ever expect that the external examiner would be positive about your, say, subsequent evaluations, right? The abstract, I'm repeating the second bullet point. The abstract is a summary of the whole thesis. It represents all the major elements of your work in a highly condensed form. An abstract, the third bullet form, an abstract often functions together with the thesis title as a standalone text. Abstracts appear absent the full text of the thesis in bibliographical indexes. They may not be presented in announcements of, they may also be presented in announcement of the thesis examination, right? So people get to read your abstract. I think not many people would be interested in reading the abstract other than your supervisor and the panel of examiners, and those who are following what you are doing, your topic, right? But it's highly likely that the abstracts will be written by audiences, by because these abstracts, thesis abstracts are also included in bibliographic databases. I think there's a high chance that the abstracts is written by a wider audience than the thesis itself, right? So pay attention to writing a very good abstract, because that will be the first assessment of your work by external examiner, as well as the subsequent readers after you graduate, right? So if after you graduate, if your abstract is not very well written, there will be so many critics for your degree itself, and they will say that, okay, there were so many mistakes, and I don't know how he graduated with such a dismal abstract contained in his thesis and so on, right? Don't ever invite these negative criticisms for your work, not formulating a good abstract. An abstract is not merely an introduction or preface, preamble, or advanced organizer that prepares the reader. It is a summary of the whole thesis, right? So it must be, this is the last sentence is very important here. It must be capable of substituting the whole thesis with limitation of spaces for the full text. This is very important. This is very important. It must be capable of substituting for the whole thesis, right? If a reader, if he forgets about the whole thesis, the abstract should represent whatever that you are presenting in the thesis. Unfortunately, you don't have much space for that as well. Currently, the average size of abstract submitted is about 250 for undergraduate and MSc thesis, and for a PhD thesis, it's about 350 words, right? That's why your writing skills are very important here. You have to develop the style of writing, skills of writing, well beyond an average person. You have to have above average, superior abilities in writing, right? Without writing, these tips might not be useful for you, right? Without the entire content of the scientific writing program might not be useful for you unless otherwise you have superior writing skills, right? Please develop writing skills to a level above average, right? So that at least, you can be poor at grammar, you can correct grammatical mistakes later on. You can get the help of somebody, but not the style of writing. If you want to organize your abstract, the content that I showed you before, the examples, you may have noted that the sentences are very well connected and the flow of information is so nice, right? The grammatical mistakes, if you're not good at grammar, I mean, you can brush that up as well, but you can get help for correcting grammar, but not for the style of writing. You can't get help, much help for style of writing. Your supervisor might criticize you for not writing clearly, but he or she might not always tell you how to say construct sentences so that your writing would be clear. They might the supervisors or the external examiners might highlight certain say sections as not clear, right? So it's the obligation, it's the duty, it's the onus is with the student or the researcher himself or herself for clarity of writing, right? You have to be a very good writer if you want to succeed in scientific circles, in professional circles, in technical circles. Yes, written skills, communication skills, especially written skills. Don't ever think that oral skills will alone take you to those heights. No, written skills. I would say that written skills oral skills are equally important. But when I compare the two, written skills will stand way above oral communication skills. You have to be a very good writer, especially engineers and scientists. They are not very good writers, right? You have to develop that skill. So the second bullet point here, to preserve visual coherence, you may wish to limit the abstract for your thesis dissertation to one double-sized page, about 280. If you have one double-sized A4 page, it's about 280 pages. If you have one half-spaced page, it's about 350. I mean, don't ever. Now, I have seen some of my students when they submit thesis, if they want to make use of the space, what they do is they reduce the line spacing or they reduce the font size, right? They use Times Roman 12 1.5 spacing for the throughout the thesis, and for when it comes to the abstract, they use one line spacing, and then they reduce the size of the font, right? Say maybe 10. Thinking that they can include more in the writer, because now making the abstract as concise as possible is very difficult. I know it's a challenging task. If you are given more space, I think it's not that difficult. So assuming that they can include more information in the abstract, they make that mistake. Don't ever make that mistake. Make the abstract, the line spacing and the font size also similar, the same. Unless otherwise you have specific requirements, specific guidelines for the font sizes and line sizes. Please go by the same style that you have followed for the thesis. For thesis, 350 would be the optimum. I wouldn't say that it's maximum, but don't go beyond 350. Utilize the word limit, right? Don't ever finish your abstract in 200 words. If you are given a chance to set your abstract in 350 words, right? Your abstract should be as short as concise as possible, but it has, at the same time, it has to. It has to be. The clarity should be perfect. But at the same time, if the word limit is given to you, utilize the entire word limit. If it is 350 words, yeah, utilize the maximum page, the word limit. Don't try to squeeze the information into lesser words than 350. The third bullet point, the structure of the abstract should mirror the structure of the whole thesis. Right. If you have, for example, if you have 5 chapters: introduction, literature review, methodology, and results and conclusion, there should be at least one or more sentences to represent each of these. Doesn't need to be separate paragraphs. You can have, depending on your organization, you can have just one paragraph for the entire abstract for your thesis, or you can have 3 abstracts, depending on the requirements. I mean, you can go by the requirements of the library or your supervisor, or if the university has guidelines, please go by those guidelines. I've seen theses where the abstract is formulated in just as one paragraph, one page, or 2-3 paragraphs broken into a logical flow of information. Usually, sometimes students they would prefer to have the introduction, literature review as one page, and the research objectives all in one page, one paragraph, the methods in the second paragraph, results and conclusions in the third paragraph. I mean, whatever the organization that you do, please get the consent of the supervisor, check with the requirements of the university. And if you are formulating a research monograph, again, check the requirements of the authority to which you are submitting the thesis to. And there are some important points that you need to look into thesis abstracts. As the thesis itself, the research need and objectives are critical. You have to, I mean, you can't omit these. Research need and the research question and objectives have to be the first part of your abstract, right? Not the first sentence, but it has to be towards the opening of the abstract, as closer to the opening as possible, right? So they should be presented near or beginning of the abstract. Don't just describe general things of the topic or the subject area unnecessarily. Please make sure that the research needs and objectives are described as early as possible in the abstract. Then please have some room for your need and objectives, and also the common, try to avoid some common things that would make the abstract less attractive to the examiners and the supervised examiner and the subsequent readers. Now, the most common error in the thesis abstracts is the failure to present the results appropriately. You have to make sure that the results are described appropriately and clearly, right? Don't ever overemphasize on results unless otherwise you want to highlight such things specifically, right? The primary function of your thesis abstract or the extended abstract is not to tell the readers what you did. It is to tell them what you discovered. Sometimes, unless otherwise, as I mentioned to you before, similar to the journal publications, the journal abstracts, unless otherwise your methodology is something that you need to highlight. If it is the original contribution of your study, development of the method, unless otherwise it is the focus of your study, don't give long descriptions for your methods. For example, if you are doing a water quality assessment study, don't describe these chemical methods. I mean, you can say that you followed standard procedures for analyzing samples, and the supervisor or the evaluator, anybody else could go to the rest of the thesis to find out what they are. Unless otherwise they are important to highlight. Don't overemphasize on methodologies or over describe methodologies, because you are using the most precious space that you want to utilize for results and discussion. Please make sure that because the evaluators would be looking at your results, right? But if your objective of your research is to develop the methods, yes, developing of the methods is part of your results, right? Highlight them, right? So always make sure that you give a prominent space allocation to the results and the discussion part. right? So say because the readers, including the supervisors and the evaluators, they are more interested in looking at your results and your discussion part, right? Always end the last part of your thesis abstract should discuss the importance of your results, right? So that is how you interpret them, how you summarize and interpret them, and how you connect your results to the previous studies, or how you recommend the results to be used for further studies. That is your contribution to the advancement of the field of your study, right? So usually for theses, usually we use the format which we refer to as the structured abstracts. These three examples here. There are three examples here. 1, 2, and 3. The one on the left, one in the middle, and one on the right. One on the left has been taken from the journal Nature, and the middle and the right side ones are taken from the Science journal. They are the topmost journals. You can see their abstracts are something like this. Although they are journals, they have very specific abstract formats, right? Now this is the abstract in the Nature abstract. They need the objective to be stated explicitly, the methods, results, and the conclusion. But in Science, they have called the format called the structured abstract: introduction, rationale for the study, results, conclusions. Introduction, rationale, results, conclusion. I have given these examples. When you have time, please go through this and see how well that they have structured. And you can see that now if you compare the middle one and the right-hand side one, you can see that the length of each of these sections are different depending on the nature of what you want to focus on. You can manipulate the space, but you have to make sure that you include, you devote more space for the most important parts of your research, right? So in a thesis, please omit these subtitles and have it as one structured abstract. But when you do your first draft, you can have these subsections, and then you can fill the blanks. And later you can remove these section headings like introduction, rationale, results, and so on. But at the end of the day, once you have the format of such a structured abstract, then you will not miss anything. But and when you have this breakdown, then you know which part that you have devoted more space to, right? Later you can combine these paragraphs and sections, and you can have one abstract intact as one piece of work, right? Please have a look at these examples later on. And then more on graphical abstracts. Now the trend is to have graphical abstracts in addition to the text abstracts. I think Professor Banduni, you have a separate section on graphical abstracts.
Yes, Professor Mantunga, but it's good that if you give us a small highlight of this. Yes.
I won't take much time to discuss, because now this is the traditional way of having an abstract. You have a paragraph of about 250 to 300 words put together as the abstract. But nowadays, now this is heavy metals in soils are a great threat to ecosystems, and the rapid development of industrialization has created a serious risk of heavy metal pollution. And the study took the industrial intensive this particular sub-basin in China, and they're trying to see the factors and interactions that affected the distribution of soil heavy metals, cadmium, HGAs, PB, chromium, and they're trying to describe how they have done it and what they have observed. Right now, an alternative way of representing that is a graphical abstract like this. Right now, this is the area that samples were taken. These black dots are the places where industries are located, and these triangles are for sampling locations, and these blue colored ones are the rivers. And then this is the very detailed description of the project area. And on top of this, here you have Q values and each of the heavy metals and their concentrations and where they have obtained these colors refer to these bars, I suppose. And then a Q value for these from pH plus industry category, blah, 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 blah. So you have quantitative analysis of the influencing factors and the interactions and the prediction of high risk areas, right? So they have the sample strategy, results, and then from results, this is what they are concluding from the results. And so rather than say reading this will also give a very broad understanding of the nature of the work and from the methods to results to conclusions. And if you put both together, this itself is gives a very broad understanding of the study, right? Rather than just reading this, rather than just looking at this graphical abstract, if you put them together, reading this is supplementary to the graphical abstract. Graphical abstract will support what you are reading here, right? So it will give you a complete picture of the research study. And the readers, if you are reading research papers, you might not need to go further. I mean, you have a complete picture of the entire study by combining these two, the text abstract and the graphical abstract. The graphical abstract, again, similar to the skills that you need to write a good abstract, you need to have superior skills to develop a graphical abstract as well, which you will have a separate session on. And again, another example here, this is again heavy metal pollution and how it has been analyzed and potential ecological risk and the systematic and scientific assessment of heavy metal pollutions and water quality characteristics are great importance. In this paper, sediment size, organic matter, total nitrogen, total phosphorus, and heavy metal contents were analyzed from surface water and reservoirs, blah, 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 blah. Right? So they are giving, this is depending on the dates and the average flow, say pre-water diversion, post-water diversion, and then monitoring sites and heavy metal concentrations. This is the legend given here, and how it can be interpreted. Everything is given here. So when you read through the text written in the abstract, this will be some supporting document that you can have supplementary or supportive to what you read here, right? So when you put the text abstract together with the graphical abstract, it gives a very, very good picture to the reader. Right now, for researchers, they also find it easy for them to formulate the text abstract because they're supporting material that you have again that you can organize very well so that they are complementary to each other and you can pass on the message very clearly. Right. So this is the type of graphical abstracts, and you will have a separate session on graphical abstracts later on. Right. Yeah, now I think, yes, is it common to submit full paper with graphical abstract along with written abstract of our journals? Yeah, it depends on the requirements of the journal. Some journals, they need the graphical abstract after acceptance of the paper, but sometimes some journals, they need the graphical abstract also together with the original submission, right? Please go through the requirements of the journals. So you need, in most cases, you need to submit the graphical abstract once the paper has been accepted, because for reviewers they might not need the graphical abstract because they will go through the abstract and the full paper. But for readers, the example that I gave here for you in I don't know whether I have it. Yes, now this science direct search here, for example, now in most cases they have graphical abstracts. Just take one paper randomly and see the abstract is given here, and the graphical abstract is also given. This is the final version of the paper, right? So this written abstract and the graphical abstract, they are all both free for anybody to review, right? But for submissions, in most cases, in most journals, they don't need the graphical abstracts for your first submission, initial submission. right? But it depends. In some journals, it's very rare, but there are some journals who needs the graphical abstracts also at the preliminary stage. But most they need it once the paper has been accepted. So that they place the abstract together with the graphical abstract in any bibliographical database or electronic database and any search engine, right? So abstracts are the last few slides here. These are the things that you need to know as a summary. Always include a few introductory sentences to give context to the research. That is the beginning of the abstract. Make sure that you give at least a part of the sentence as the summary of the previous research or the thesis statement, or to introduce the area of your work. And include a statement on why your work is innovative or original, right? You can combine that with the research aim or question, because you need to highlight the research need, without which you can't go further conducting research, because the research will be duplication, the research will be something that has already been done and so on, and nobody will be interested in what you are doing. So you have to, in the abstract, always try to at least you can combine these statements, identify the research questions and aims, which are, in other terms, they are the objectives of your research. And then include a few lines on methodology and the research design. And if your methodology and the research design itself is the focus of your study, give more prominent attention to that. If you there was one question before about the say model developments or modeling studies. If the development of the model itself is the originality of the work, pay attention on the methodology and the research design, because the methodology itself is the prominent part of the results, right? And then you can have the prominent findings, and also you can close the abstracts with the potential implication of your work, right? And content-wise, an abstract should stand on its own. No abbreviations should be in the abstract, unless otherwise their meaning is given in the first place where you introduce the abbreviation. If needed, you can add quantitative data to the abstract, such as sample size, the means, outcomes, or measures, and so on. Similar to the paper that I've given here, you can see lots of values given here, right? So it will give meaningful outcomes for your research. And if you think that there are some things that you need to discuss, I mean, even though I have call this negative here, they are not negative. In fact, they are also a part of your critiques, right? If you can do a critique, please do. Highlight positive findings as well as negative findings, especially if it is a conference paper. If you can highlight these negative parts, it will attract the attention of the audience, and you can say further engage in discussion with like-minded researchers, fellow researchers, and even experienced researchers as well, right? And these are some things that you should not do. Don't make grammar mistakes and typos. It will reflect very badly upon your standing, right? Your submission will be very, very weak if you make grammar mistakes and typos. Don't ever do that, right? Please make sure that somebody corrects this. If you are weak at grammar, please make sure that somebody checks for grammatical mistakes over and over again. Don't omit important information. If you omit certain parts knowingly or unknowingly, it might affect the quality of your abstract, right? Because you have to always remember that abstract is the first piece that anybody would read, right? If the abstract is not well written, the paper will not go ahead from the first submission. The editors, the reviewers will reject the paper right away. And even after acceptance of the paper, if the abstract is not well written, would you please explain the setting up of hitting title relate? with an abstract how. Yeah. I think you are referring to formulating of a research title. Is it Prasbandhari?
Yeah, yes. Now with the abstract and the research title and all.
Yeah, research. Yeah, I
research
think I have one or two slides on formulating the research title in my previous lecture.
Yes, with the related to the abstract, that is there anything?
Yeah, I think sometimes what you need to do is you have to put the most important keywords at the beginning of the title, right? And also don't repeat the words that you include in the title in your set of keywords, right? Make the title as short as possible and make sure that the syntax is correct. I mean, so grammar should be correct, and syntax, the usage of words is appropriate enough, right? And I think I have one slide that I have included in because even to formulate a research title, you need to be familiar with the previous literature, right? There's a long. Yeah,
yes.
I will take this comment later. There are four
It's okay.
questions. I think I have only 2 more slides. I will finish that and I'll get back to that. And number 3, you should not be ambiguous when stating the focus of the abstract. You have to be very clear and concise. Your clarity should be very, very important here. Don't use undefined words, right? Don't use jargon and unnecessary abbreviations. Sometimes if you are doing something in the Sri Lankan context, sometimes you take it, granted that you just report it as they are. And for example, if you say Yala season or Maha season, nobody else would know what Yala season is if you include that in the abstract. Because in the full paper, you can describe what Yala season is. If you include Yala in your abstract, then that is ambiguous, right? If you say if you are working on Attanagalu Basin without referring to that it's in Sri Lanka in the abstract, you can include a detailed map and all the geographical details in the paper, but if you just include Attanagalu Basin, the name of the Attanagalu Basin in the abstract, it's ambiguous for a reader outside Sri Lanka, right? So don't use jargon or there are some abbreviations that you can make use of. Don't ever use them. Don't take them for granted that anybody else would know what they are. And also there are some very popular words that you are using. They are non-technical, but they are acceptable to any audience other than the written jargon. Say, for example, sometimes we say that Google the keywords, say Google this and see what the results are. Now, so Googling or Google is to make a detailed search on the internet, right? So don't use these not so standard terminology, jargon in the abstract. But in the full paper, you can use them if you define them properly, right? And also don't forget to make links with the conference teams. If you are planning to submit a paper to a conference, make sure that your topic and the content of your paper, the abstract aligns with the conference theme. If not, it will be a joke for the organizers when they see your paper, right? And don't go over the word limit. Long abstracts discourage reviewers from reading them, and also conference organizers and also journal editors, they are very concerned about the length of the paper, because unless otherwise the length is a need. Make your paper as short as possible, and don't include quotes, don't include tables or charts or equations unless otherwise the equation itself is the focus of the research. Don't include sentences in the first person. Don't include citations, and anything that is not included in the subsequent paper. Now, sometimes you make that mistake. Sometimes you formulate your thesis, and if your evaluators and the supervisor wants parts of your thesis removed, results modified, but still you forget to revise the abstract. You keep the original abstract as it is. Sometimes the information that you have contained in the abstract is now have been modified. Please make sure that if your thesis or the paper goes extensive revision, make sure that your abstract also goes the same kind of revision, right? Don't include hyperlinks and list of keywords. Don't repeat the ones that you have included in the title, right? And I mean, you can't avoid using the keywords in the abstract, but make sure that the title and the keywords are not repeated. And common mistakes. Abstract is not just a summary, right? It's not paraphrasing your work. You have to extract the most important parts and then make the abstract to represent the most important sections, most important information from your work. For your thesis, it's the most important parts extracted from each section, and it's a miniature thesis that you have as the abstract, right? And don't include too much of background information. Don't include too many information about the methods. Don't explain what your results mean. Say if that is the case, if you don't explain what your results mean, then readers might not find any reason why they need to go further to read your paper, right? Don't include citations, abbreviations, and detailed measurements. Don't include information not present in the paper, and don't ever submit the paper without referring to the complete set of instructions to authors, right? And remember, don't assume your readers know everything that you do, right? And don't assume all published papers have good abstracts. Don't ever go through all the abstracts and see that. I mean, even though the papers are published, don't ever assume that all the abstracts are very good to follow, right? When you go through abstracts, you can also judge whether the abstract is good, well written or not. If you find a well written abstract, please, the content is important for you, as well as try to copy the style of that writing. That is not stealing an intellectual property, right? So when you look at a dress, right, you copy the style. When you see a good hairstyle, you copy that, right? It doesn't harm anybody. When you see the style of writing, I mean, stealing that, it's copying that is not stealing or plagiarizing, right? But don't copy contents or the scientific information. But for writing styles, yes, you can copy. If you see a very well formulated table or a figure, you can follow the same style. There's no harm in that, right? Similarly, when you read a good abstract, say if you can pick certain attributes, certain features, good features that you can follow, please copy them. There's no harm in doing that, right? And these are some common mistakes when this also is taken from the internet. Mostly, most of the abstracts, they contain grammars or typos and missing information, ambiguous aims, objectives are not very clearly defined, and undefined terms, no link to the theme or the title, and the word limit. This is okay. This is because you can have control on that. Please don't make these mistakes whenever you submit the papers. Don't hype the abstract. Don't make the abstract stand big when your paper is something like this, right? So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I've taken 18 minutes more. I think it's partly Pras Bandhan is responsible because she took 10 minutes for the introduction.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And the last comment,
yes.
Sir, would be grateful to you if you could explain the following. What is the difference between conclusion and abstract? Yeah, the abstract is very clearly, it has more features than conclusions. Conclusions are the outcomes of your research, right? Abstract is you start with the thesis statement, and you state you identify the objectives. Sorry, prior to that, you state the need for conducting the research, and then the objectives, and then you describe the methods, and then you describe the results. conclusion part is something that you have to highlight, the things that you need to highlight from what you have done. If your methodology is the original focus, then your conclusion would be whether the methodology is valid or not, right? If you do an experimental study or a field study, in the conclusions you highlight the most important outcomes of your research, right? So it's very different. They're two different. And part of conclusion is also part of the abstract, but abstract is not part of conclusion. So if you take conclusion, conclusion is a subset of the abstract, right? The second, should the keywords represent the abstract or entire document? Yeah, keywords should represent the, now when it comes to abstract, I think if you write the abstract very carefully, it might represent the entire document. But it doesn't mean that you can include different keywords which you are not included in the title or the abstract. Yeah, if you can identify keywords which you have not identified in the title and the abstract, yes, you are always welcome, because you are making sure that you add another keyword in the search engine so that others can. You are trying to increase the probability of finding your paper, visibility of your paper more. Right. So if you can identify keywords which you have not repeated in the title or the abstract, yes, you're always welcome to do that. So if you're not using any of the words that you have included in the title or the abstract as keywords, yeah, you're on the top, because you are providing more keywords for search engines so that your paper will be is more visible to the search engines. Number 3, what is the difference in writing abstract for a review? Writing an abstract for a review chapter is I have not touched upon that. That's a very difficult task, because that also depends on the need for conducting a review article, right? So you have to first you have to the thesis statement would be the same, and the need for conducting research is need for conducting such a review, right? Or a book chapter, for example. Book chapter is also kind of a review of what has already been done, right? So in that case, you have to identify why do you need to write, why do you need to review this this area of research? Why do you need to write a book chapter on this particular topic? Right, so that has to be included after the thesis requirement, and then you can highlight what you have found as the result the review outcome. The purpose of conducting a review is a critical review is to critically evaluate what has already been done and to highlight certain important findings, right? Probably to highlight the further advancements that are possible, further avenues for further research. Then you can highlight them as the outcome of your research, right? So writing an abstract for a review paper itself is a bit difficult, because you need to identify the need for conducting a review. Now, some of the students, they do this mistake. Once they do a literature review for their PhD or MPhil or MSc, they assume that they are in a position to conduct a critical review or review article for a journal, right? This is a serious mistake. You would need to have superior knowledge about what has already been done, and you need to have a vision on what to be done next if you want to draft a review paper. Without which, say the researchers, even the supervisors with less experience, they encourage the students to write a review paper. Review papers should never be written by not so experienced researchers. They are meant for very, very prominent researchers in the field who knows the past history, past developments, present developments, as well as who can predict the future, right? So the answer for the third is the same. There's a big there's nothing different, but you have to identify the need for conducting a review, and then you have to summarize what you have found and what you can propose from the outcome of your review. Number 4, how highlights of an article differ from abstract. Yeah. Yeah, nowadays, the third element of a journal abstract is highlights of an article. Yeah, I think highlights of an article and abstract, it's very difficult to explain that, but now the latest trend is that anybody would first read the highlights of the articles before reading the abstract, right? So when you have highlights of the article, maybe 3 or 4 or 5, up to about 5 highlights, they have again to it's a summary of the abstract itself, but you can include anything which are not even included in the abstract. It's kind of a publicity that you give to your research work, right? In most cases, this highlights of an article has to be submitted once you finish all the review processes, and you have time until you formulate these highlights. Right now, when you write an article, research article, you are a little bit under stress. You don't feel like thinking beyond what you are writing. Once you submit the thesis, you feel relaxed. Right. Once your paper is accepted, you are expected to submit the graphical abstracts together with the highlights. In that phase, your concise will be a bit. You're free to think ahead, and you can include highlights for an article. Again, for that, you need to have superior skills of writing. But if not, you can ask your colleagues to help with you, as they are not standard writing. But again, when you go through an article review abstract, always make sure that you read the highlights of an article, right? Highlights of an article. I will just give you an example here. Now here, this paper, impact of rapid urbanization and the threshold effect in the relationship between impervious surfaces and water quality. And these are the highlights. Highlights non-linear relationship is disclosed between this and water quality. Threshold effect is different in terms of water quality. The threshold increases with the urban level. Threshold effect becomes less apparent. Now here you can see. This is the thesis statement, and all the three, the second and the third highlights the results, and the third highlights the next level or the interpretation of what they have seen. Probably, if you go through this again, this may be the highlights are described in a different terminology, different context in the abstract. But before reading the abstract, anybody would read the highlights. If the highlights are attractive enough, they will go through the abstract with the graphical abstract, so that they are complementary to each other. And if the abstract is good enough, and if the reader thinks that the abstract is very relevant to their research, if it is interesting, they will purchase the full paper, or they will find the full paper somehow, and they will go through, right? So these highlights also should be written at the very end, right? You write the text abstract, and you submit it together with the first draft of your paper. And if your paper is abstracted, then you develop the graphical abstract and then the highlights. You can edit the text abstract a little bit, because if you can make things clearer when it is read together with the graphical abstract, right? Before your final submission, you might need to go through the abstract again and do necessary modifications to go together with the graphical abstract. And then the last step, you highlight. You provide highlights here. Highlights doesn't need to be full sentences. It can be phrases where you can highlight the most important findings of your research, and you can highlight why your results are important, how they contribute to the advancement of the existing knowledge. Right. I think that is enough our discussion here. But if you have anything else to discuss, and the persons who have given these comments? Have I, if I have not answered your queries, please ask me again. I will try to explain it further.
Yeah, please raise your hand if you have any questions. So otherwise you can type into your chat box. I think since we are finishing this one, please stop putting the thank you wordings, because otherwise it will disturb the resource person, Jagat, to find out what are the questions you are posting. Please raise your hand and ask your question. I think Professor Jagat always, while he was doing the questions that this lecture that he was answering, and therefore probably you may not have much questions.
Yeah, if not, we can wind up. We can conclude.
Yes, seems that. And yeah, just they are posting that the thank you wordings. It's good. That seems that they have understood very well that what you have done. And thank you so much once again, Professor Jagat, for your kindness to supporting us for conducting this certificate program. And
thank you very much for inviting me anyway. It's a great privilege.
Actually, that I'm not sure whether we are troubling you again and again, but we are planning to invite you once again about the plagiarism and the ethics regarding that, so that we want a date from you. And so shall we then wind up the session? And thank you so much for all the participants being with us, as well as that Mr. Chamila from IESL side, and Ms. Engineer Manti from from LNP side, and Professor Pandit Sanayaka, who is chairing this session, chairing this committee, Library and Publication Committee of IESL. And of course, that for our resource person, Professor Jagat Mantunga. Thank you very much, sir, for your kindness and supporting us, as well as your very great explanation that to help us to understand how to write a good abstract, of course, effectively. Thank you very much for all of you. Thank you, sir.